My family left me behind like I didn't matter, so I vanished without a word and watched their perfect world collapse without me. This was a 3-week trip to Europe, a vacation they'd been planning for months, taking my sister Lauren along and leaving me behind. They weren't talking to anyone else but me. It was barely 6 in the morning. I still had sleep in my eyes, wearing the same navy hoodie from the night before. I'd only come downstairs to help with their bags. My hair was uncombed, my face unwashed, and I hadn't even brushed my teeth yet. I stood in the entryway, shifting my weight from one foot to the other. My mother was reciting her mental checklist: passports, tickets, currency, chargers. My father double-checked the taxi reservation on his phone. Neither looked up. I thought maybe there'd be a real goodbye before they left, a hug, a thank you for helping, some acknowledgement that I was being excluded from yet another family milestone. Instead, all I got was that casual dismissal, "You'll be fine on your own," like I was some houseplant that just needed watering once a week. Lauren appeared at the top of the stairs, her wheeled suitcase bumping rhythmically against each step as she descended. She beamed beside my parents, her passport already in hand, her nails freshly done, undoubtedly paid for with one of my parents' "you deserve it" gifts. Her hair was perfectly styled despite the early hour, blonde waves falling over the shoulders of her new travel jacket. They looked like a matching set, the three of them, coordinated luggage, new jackets with subtle designer labels at the cuffs, that unmistakable glow of excitement they always seemed to share when they were together. I must have looked like I'd wandered into someone else's family photo, rumpled, tired, an afterthought. "We'll send postcards," Lauren offered, not meeting my eyes. Her own were bright with anticipation. "And I'll get you something nice." I nodded, said nothing, and watched them leave, my mother calling a final reminder over her shoulder: "Don't forget to water the plants in the sunroom." As the door shut behind them, the silence of the house wrapped around me like a heavy coat, too familiar, too tight. I stood in the middle of the hallway for a long while, surrounded by the quiet that always followed their departures. That's the thing about being the quiet one in a family of noisemakers. People assume you don't mind the silence. But sometimes, the silence is the wound itself. I walked to the kitchen window and watched the taxi pull away from the curb. Something about the way my parents had delivered that casual brush-off settled in my bones and stayed there, a cold weight that wouldn't budge. It wasn't new, this feeling of being an afterthought, but somehow this time felt different, more final. All my life, I'd been the one who didn't ask for much, the one who handled things. I never complained, never got into trouble. While Lauren, well, she got all the oxygen in every room she entered. Every graduation, every recital, every dinner table conversation. She was the headline, and I was the footnote. She was the princess, I was the guard at the door. But guards get tired too, and in that moment something inside me didn't just snap. It shifted, a tectonic movement, slow but irreversible. I finished my cold coffee, walked upstairs and opened my closet door. I pulled out the battered suitcase I'd had since high school, not the matching set they bought Lauren for her 18th birthday, and placed it on my bed. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but I suddenly knew with perfect clarity that I wouldn't be here when they returned. That was day one, and it was only just beginning. Packing didn't take long. When you've spent your life not taking up too much space, you don't leave much of a trail. Everything I truly cared about fit into 2 cardboard boxes, a duffel bag, and that old suitcase. I moved methodically through my room, selecting only what felt unmistakably mine. Not gifts purchased with obligatory attention, not hand-me-downs, just things I had chosen for myself with my own money, reflecting my own taste. There wasn't much: the framed photograph of my grandfather and me fishing when I was 10. He was the only one who ever seemed to see me clearly. Books I bought with my own paychecks from the bookstore job I'd held through college. The quilt my grandmother had made specially for me before she died. The one family heirloom that had come to me instead of Lauren. My laptop, my small collection of vinyl records, 3 plants I had nursed from cuttings. I left behind the expensive watch my parents had given me for graduation, 3 months after they'd forgotten my actual ceremony. I left the designer clothes my mother occasionally bought me when guilt prompted momentary attention. I left the gaming system my father had purchased when he briefly thought we should bond over shared hobbies, only to lose interest 2 weeks later. I didn't write a note, didn't leave an explanation. I didn't even call my boss to say I wouldn't be coming in on Monday. I just stopped showing up to a life that had never really felt like mine. That first night, I drove west, following the highway until the suburbs thinned into countryside. I checked into a month-to-month rental in a quiet town 3 hours away, a place I'd found online weeks ago when the weight of my invisibility had started to feel unbearable. I think I always knew, in some hidden corner of my mind, that one day I would have to go. I just never thought I'd actually do it. The apartment was small, a one-bedroom with faded beige carpet and windows that stuck when you tried to open them. The previous tenant had left behind a threadbare couch and a kitchen table with uneven legs. The bathroom had water stains on the ceiling, and the refrigerator hummed so loudly it seemed to be working itself to death. But it was clean. It was quiet. And most importantly, it was mine. I spent that first evening arranging my few possessions, creating a space that held only my preferences, my rhythms, my choices. No concessions, no compromises, no careful navigation around others' moods and needs. For the first time in my life, the silence around me was a choice, not a punishment. The first few days passed in a strange limbo, not peaceful, not yet, but quiet in a way I'd never experienced before. I left my phone on, mostly out of habit, but I didn't respond to anything. Not work emails, not the handful of casual acquaintances checking in. Nothing. What surprised me most was that for those first days, no one from my family contacted me at all. No one seemed to notice I was gone. That's the thing about being invisible, you can vanish completely, and no one will realize until the lights start flickering or the bills go unpaid. Then came day 3. It started around noon. My phone buzzed once, then again, and again. By the time I picked it up, there were 9 unread messages, then 13, then 17. I didn't open them, just watched the numbers climb higher, feeling a detached curiosity. By the afternoon, my inbox was a war zone. The notifications kept coming, a constant stream of digital panic. It started with a message from my parents. "Where the hell are you? This isn't funny." Then came another, "We told you we'd only be gone for a few weeks. You didn't have to freak out." Followed by, "Lauren, can you please just answer? This is getting ridiculous." And then the extended family began chiming in. Aunts, uncles, even my cousin Matt, who I hadn't spoken to since high school graduation. They all suddenly had urgent questions. Where was I? Why had I left? Why wasn't I answering? Some messages dripped with performative concern, others barely disguised their frustration. My Uncle Robert, always my father's defender, accused me of being cruel and dramatic. My parents' third message just said, "You're being selfish, you always were." That one made me laugh out loud in my empty apartment. Because if I'd ever been truly selfish, they wouldn't have had so much to lose when I disappeared. I didn't reply, not to a single message. I just sat there on that creaky old couch in my tiny new place, phone in hand, watching them spin themselves into chaos. It was like pulling a single card from the bottom of a house of cards and watching the whole structure tremble. They weren't used to me making noise. But silence, my silence, was louder than anything I'd ever said, and I could tell they were starting to panic, real panic. Not the manufactured kind they displayed when Lauren missed curfew or failed a class. By the end of that day, the messages stopped asking where I was. They started asking why, and that's when it got truly interesting. There's something surreal about watching your family unravel from the outside, like standing on the other side of a two-way mirror, watching a conversation you were never meant to hear. My cousin Tara, always the family gossip, sent me a screenshot of the group chat my parents had started. It was supposed to be a damage control effort, but it turned into a blame game within 20 minutes. My parents opened with, "He's just trying to guilt us." Classic attention-seeking. Lauren chimed in, "Defensive, he's not like that. Maybe he just needed space." And then my aunt, my mother's own sister, replied, "Maybe if you hadn't babied Lauren for her entire life and treated him like an afterthought, he wouldn't have felt like he had to disappear to be noticed." That shut the chat down for a solid hour. No one knew how to respond to the truth spoken aloud. It had always been the family's unacknowledged elephant, the stark imbalance in how we were treated. Then came the private messages, sent directly to me when the group failed to produce solutions. My aunt reached out, "We always knew you were the one holding things together. I'm sorry we didn't say it sooner." I stared at those words blinking on my screen. holding things together. I hadn't even realized they saw it too. This role I'd been assigned without ever agreeing to it. My cousin Jeff, always the bluntest of the family, wrote, "What did they say to you before they left? Heard they told you to handle things like usual." That tracks. I didn't respond, of course, but I sat with those messages for a long time, feeling the shape of them. They were starting to piece it together. Not just what had happened, but why. And the more they talked amongst themselves, the more it all surfaced. Years of imbalance, years of favoritism, years of quiet exploitation disguised as responsibility. A message from my mother's cousin stood out among the others. "You were always the backup plan. I noticed that. I just didn't want to interfere." Backup plan. Those two words hit harder than anything else because they were true in a way I couldn't deny. Every late-night phone call when a bill was due. Every canceled plan when someone needed a ride. Every "can you just do us this one favor?" I was the default, the fail-safe, the one they didn't worry about because they thought I didn't need anything. And now that I was gone, they were realizing how much I'd been holding. The cracks were showing, one by one. Their stories about our perfect family were beginning to split at the seams, and I hadn't said a word to cause it. The next morning there was a knock at my door, not a text, not a phone call, an actual knock. I wasn't expecting anyone. No one knew where I'd gone, at least I thought no one did. I peeked through the blinds and saw a figure pacing on the front step, arms crossed, ponytail swaying with every anxious shift of her weight. Lauren, of course. I didn't open the door right away. I stood there, just out of sight, and watched her try to rehearse whatever speech she had planned. She looked rattled. Good. Eventually, I opened the door halfway, blocking the entrance with my body. She jumped a little when she saw me, like she'd been expecting someone else, or perhaps a version of me that no longer existed. "Hey," she said, her voice soft, softer than I'd heard it in years, like she wasn't sure which version of me would answer. "Can I come in?" I didn't move from the doorway. Why? She shifted her weight, looking down at her designer boots, the ones that probably cost more than my rent. "Because our parents are losing their minds. They think something happened to you." A pause, then more quietly, "and I just wanted to talk. Just us." I let her in. Not because I was ready to forgive her. Not because I wanted to hear whatever carefully constructed apology she'd practiced in the car, but because part of me wanted to know if she even understood what she'd been a part of all these years. She stepped inside and looked around the apartment like it was a crime scene. "So, this is where you've been?" "Yeah," I said, closing the door behind her. "Nothing fancy, but it's quiet." She sat on the edge of the couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Look, I know things have been uneven between us. I know you think I've had it easy." "You have had it easy," I said, the words flat, factual. She flinched but didn't argue. "Okay, maybe I have. But I didn't ask to be the favorite." I raised an eyebrow. "You sure acted like it." That hung in the air between us for a long moment. She looked down at her hands, picking at her perfect manicure. "Our parents shouldn't have said that to you, about being fine on your own." She hesitated. "I didn't even realize it until you were gone. But when they said it, they meant it like it was your job to be okay." "It always was," I said. "That's the point." Lauren swallowed hard. "They miss you." "No," I said calmly. "They miss the version of me that made their lives easier. That cleaned up the messes, that paid for things without asking questions, that stayed quiet so no one else had to." She didn't argue. She couldn't. The truth was too obvious now, exposed like a nerve. Then she tried the last card she had left. "Just come home, please. We can talk about all of this. We can make it right." I shook my head. "I am home, and I meant it. This bare little apartment with its creaky floors and thrift store couch, it wasn't much, but it was mine. And it was the first place I'd ever been that didn't ask me to carry anyone else's weight." Lauren stood, her eyes glassy now. "They're going to fall apart without you." I opened the door, then let them. After Lauren left, the messages turned desperate, not angry, not demanding, desperate. My parents sent a string of emails, one after another, like they thought if they changed the wording enough, one might finally earn a reply. The first was still puffed up with authority. "This stunt needs to end. You're acting like a child." By the fifth, their tone had cracked. "Please, just let us know you're okay." Then came the voicemails. My mother, who hadn't said a word to me in months without it being filtered through Lauren or my father, left a message that caught me off guard. Her voice was soft, hollow. I didn't realize how much you did until you weren't here to do it. That one I played twice. But I didn't reply, not out of pettiness, not even out of revenge. It was just that silence was the only thing they had ever really listened to. They didn't hear me when I was helping. They didn't hear me when I was struggling. They didn't hear me when I tried to ask for less or just a little space or even recognition. But now, every missed call, every unanswered message, they felt it like a weight they never noticed until it was lifted off my shoulders and placed finally on theirs. They were falling apart without my quiet compliance. Their perfectly balanced family system was collapsing without its foundation. The extended family group chat turned into a feeding frenzy of accusations. Some blamed my parents directly for their favoritism. Others said Lauren was too spoiled to function as an adult. My parents fired back with old grudges from decades ago, things no one had mentioned in years. Secrets surfaced, things I hadn't even known. Turns out, I wasn't the only one quietly holding everything together. Other relatives had been burned before, pushed out, minimized, forgotten. They just hadn't said anything until now, until my absence made it safe to speak. I watched them unravel like an old sweater, one stitch at a time. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to, because this was never about revenge. This was about absence, and how powerful it becomes when it's the only thing you leave behind. The thing no one tells you about being the quiet one, the reliable one, is that over time, people stop checking if you're okay. They just assume you are because you don't complain, you don't raise your voice, you don't cause trouble. They see your stillness and mistake it for strength. And eventually they begin to build their lives on top of it, like constructing a house on what they assume is bedrock, never bothering to check what lies beneath. Looking back, I think that's what happened with my family. Not all at once, not with a plan or some grand betrayal. It was slower than that, a creeping kind of erosion. Every time I paid a bill without being asked, every time I offered to help so no one else had to, every time I swallowed my own needs because Lauren was going through something, or my parents were too stressed right now, they started depending on my silence to make their noise feel normal. I'd become their scaffolding, the thing holding up a structure that never really supported me back. And like scaffolding, I wasn't meant to be seen. So when I stepped away, no fight, no shouting match, just gone. They didn't know what to do. They had never prepared for the possibility that I might choose myself. I think part of them still believed I was bluffing, that I'd come back eventually, that the messages, the voicemails, the family fallout would wear me down. But what they didn't understand was this: silence had always been my language, and this time it was intentional. I didn't move out to make a statement. I moved out because it was the first time I realized I could. That I didn't owe them my peace just because they never learned how to create their own. My landlord, a kind older guy named Dennis who lived downstairs, asked me once if I was running from something. I smiled and said, "Not running, just done carrying." It was a Thursday when they showed up in person. I remember because it was laundry day, and I was halfway through folding shirts on my tiny couch when I saw the car pull up through the blinds. My parents' SUV, the one I helped them buy 3 years ago when their credit was shot. I never put my name on the paperwork. Should have. Maybe then they'd have thought twice before using it to drive Lauren to the airport. The knock came fast, heavy, like they thought volume would fix everything. I didn't answer. A second knock, this time softer. Then a voice, "Lawrence, please just talk to us." I stayed perfectly still. They didn't leave. After 5 minutes I heard their voices drift through the thin door. No yelling, at least not at first, just the rustle of movement and the low murmur of people trying to figure out how they'd gotten here. Lauren kept saying, "He's not like this. Something must have happened." And my parents, my ever-practical stubborn parents, just repeated the same things in different forms. "He's being dramatic. He'll come to his senses." My mother whispered, "He's too sensitive, just like I used to be." That last one made me pause. I leaned in just a little, straining to hear. "I told you this would happen," my father muttered. "If you kept pushing and letting him see too much. He was always close to your side. I should have put distance sooner." Lauren whispered something I couldn't hear. Then my mother said, low and bitter, "If he opens that door, everything falls apart." And just like that, I understood. This wasn't about concern. It wasn't even about guilt. It was about control, about the delicate illusion that had kept everything running. Me quiet, me present, me invisible. They weren't here to apologize. They were here to restore the system. I didn't open the door. I let them stew outside for 15 more minutes before they finally left, muttering frustrated reassurances to each other, still convinced they could fix it, but they couldn't because I was no longer a part of the machine they'd built around my silence. And without me, the gears were grinding themselves to dust. The next few days were quiet again, not peaceful, not yet, but different. A hollow kind of quiet, like when a storm has passed and you're left surveying the wreckage. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel powerful. I felt unburdened for the first time. There were no late-night texts asking for favors, no passive-aggressive guilt trips, no sudden family emergencies that only I could fix, no expectations hanging over my head like unpaid debts. And as the silence stretched, they started to realize what they'd lost. It wasn't just my presence. It was the little things, the things they never even noticed until they stopped happening. No one remembered to schedule their doctor appointments. No one reminded Lauren to pay her credit card bill on time. No one fixed Mom's broken sink or dropped off groceries when she couldn't make it to the store. They lost the person who filled in all the cracks, the one who remembered birthdays, who showed up when no one else did, who sent the just checking in messages when family members got quiet, who made sure the group chat didn't go silent for too long. In a strange twist, my cousin Matt, who had barely spoken to me before, started sending the occasional message, "Nothing deep, just you good?" Or "Still out there?" Or "Miss seeing you at Grandma's." And my aunt, the same one who once told me Lauren just needed more help than I did, sent a single line that stuck with me. "You were the only one keeping the peace. We didn't see it until the peace was gone." I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because she was right, and letting them sit in that absence was the only way any of it would ever sink in. The longer I stayed silent, the louder everything around me became. Not physically. My little apartment was still quiet as could be. But the noise came in waves from the outside, the texts, the voicemails, the sudden appearances in my inbox from people I hadn't spoken to in years. And yet, I didn't respond. Not once. Because that was the point. They didn't want to hear me. They wanted to fix the shape I left behind. They wanted the version of me that folded his feelings into neat, quiet corners. They didn't want an actual conversation. They wanted me to play my part again. But I wasn't that person anymore. Lauren sent me a long email, 2 pages, single-spaced. She tried everything: nostalgia, guilt, even a bit of manufactured vulnerability. "I miss how we used to talk," she wrote. "I didn't realize I was making you feel small. I just thought you were fine. You always acted like you were fine." That line hit like a dull blade because it was true. I had acted fine. Because somewhere along the way, I learned that asking for help wasn't worth the price of the apology I'd get in return. That showing any kind of need would just make me a problem. And I wasn't allowed to be a problem, not when I was the reliable one. But here's the thing about always being the one who seems fine. Eventually, people stop looking beneath the surface. They stop asking. They stop seeing you at all. When my parents finally called again, I picked up, not to talk. I just wanted to hear the silence on their end for once. They didn't yell this time. Their voices were low, tired. "Is this really it?" my father asked. "You're just done?" I didn't say a word. I could hear them moving, probably pacing like they always did when they felt something slipping through their fingers. "You're punishing us," my mother said. "You're punishing the family." Still, I said nothing. "You think the silence proves something," my father pressed, his voice rising. "That you're above all of us now? You don't get to act like you're innocent, like you didn't have a part in this too." I pressed the side button and ended the call, not because he was wrong, not entirely. I did have a part in it. I was the one who let myself get erased, piece by piece, in the name of keeping everyone else comfortable. But silence wasn't punishment. It was closure for me, the kind they were never going to offer, the kind they didn't think I deserved. After that call, I changed my number, set up a new email, blocked them all. Not out of cruelty, but because I realized they weren't asking for me. They were asking for access. And access is something you earn. They never did. And the beautiful, liberating truth was, I didn't owe them a single explanation. The silence they now found unbearable, That was the message. It's been 6 months. No more calls. No more knocks on the door. No more please. Just explain. The messages slowed, then stopped. Life got quiet in the way I always wanted it to be. Not lonely, just mine. I have a job at a local bookstore now. I'm taking classes at the community college. I have a small circle of new friends who know nothing about the family I left behind. They like me for who I am, not what I can do for them. Last week, something unexpected happened. I was restocking the biography section when I heard the bell above the door chime. I didn't look up right away. Tuesday afternoons are usually slow, and I was focused on alphabetizing a new shipment. Lawrence. The voice made me freeze. Soft, hesitant, familiar. I turned slowly to see my mother standing there, alone. She looked smaller somehow, older than when I'd last seen her. Her hair had more gray, and she wasn't wearing the carefully applied makeup that had been her armor for as long as I could remember. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice steady. She didn't approach any closer. "I'm not here to ask you to come back," she said quietly. "I just needed to see you." I continued shelving books, keeping my hands busy. "How did you find me?" "Lauren saw you here last month. She didn't approach you. Just told me where you were." I nodded. "And Dad?" "He doesn't know I'm here." She shifted her weight, clutching her purse strap. "We're not together anymore." That made me pause. I looked at her directly. "It wasn't just you," she continued. "But when you left, everything we'd been ignoring became impossible to pretend away anymore." I said nothing, letting her fill the silence. "I started therapy," she offered. "Turns out, I've been using Lauren as a way to relive my own life, and you as—" She trailed off. "As the adult you never had to be," I finished for her. She nodded, eyes down. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it yet. I just wanted you to know that your leaving changed things. Changed me." The old me would have rushed to comfort her, to make this moment easier, but I wasn't that person anymore. "I'm glad," I said simply, "but I'm not coming back." "I know." She pulled out a small envelope from her purse and placed it on the counter. "This is the title to the SUV. You paid for most of it. It's yours now if you want it." She turned to leave, then paused. "You look good, Lawrence. You look like yourself." After she left, I finished my shift, had dinner with my new friends, and came home to my quiet apartment. I didn't feel the earthquake of emotions I might have expected, just a strange sense of closure. Sometimes, I wonder if my family ever truly understood what happened, if they ever realized that all those years of treating my silence as consent was what ultimately taught me its power, that in teaching me to disappear, they gave me the perfect way to leave. I think maybe my mother is beginning to understand. The others, I'm not so sure. People rarely recognize the weapons they give others to use against them. But that's okay. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not even sad. I'm just finally wonderfully quiet in a way that belongs to me. And sometimes, that's enough. Last night I sat on my small balcony, watching the sunset, a cup of tea cooling beside me. My phone buzzed with a text from one of my new friends, asking if I wanted to join them for breakfast tomorrow. I smiled and replied, yes. The difference now is that my silence is a choice, not a sentence. I speak when I want to. I'm quiet when I need to be. My voice, my silence, both belong to me now, and sometimes, that silence really is the only answer worth giving to those who never earned the right to hear you.